Hey everybody, welcome back to Creating Scenery for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Today I'm making ground markings and I am using two bits of software to get this done. One is Krita, which is free. Link in the description of the video to download that. Like I said, it's a Photoshop clone. It doesn't do 100% what Photoshop does, but I only probably have to use maybe 10% of Photoshop anyway, so Krita does that 10% and more. Anyway, so I use Krita to do my texturing, my graphic stuff, and obviously we're using Blender today as well. So I have a blank project here in Blender. And we are going to make some simple ground markings. All right. Now, this is different than making a material that you would put in your material library to add a polygon with that image in it. Okay. Not to be confused with that process. This process is, I've done a video on projected meshes, and this is the process to make a projected mesh. To accomplish pretty much the same thing. However, I believe projected meshes will give you better image quality. All right, so what are we working on? Let's bring up the browser, and I am going to slide my reference data over here. This is not Google Earth. This is Greene County, Ohio's GIS site. GIS stands for Geographic Information System. And I go to the source to get my information, and the county owns the data, not the United States government or Google or Bing or any other mapping firm out there. This belongs to the taxpayers of the state of Ohio, and it's up to date. They pay for the aerial flights, they pay for all this data, and they give it to all the constituents everywhere to use freely. And your Google will never have this data on Google Earth in a timely manner. They will get it because it is governmental data that they'll have access to, but it's going to take them a long time to get this data into their Google servers. This aerial photography is 2022, and it has 3-inch resolution, which will not make it into Google, by the way. Their resolution is not that great. They might have 6-inch or 1-foot resolution, but they won't get 3-inch. It's too much data for their servers to digest, okay, and make it available on the world map. Anyway, I digress. I'm a cartographer by profession, so this is the stuff I dabble into all the time. Anyway, I'm really getting off topic. I'm making ground markings. All right, we have an ILS Hold over here on the 445th airlift side of the airport, and we have on the side that the civil aviation is allowed to have access to sometimes under contract. We have some hold short signs. And notice, by the way, this is an Air Force base. There's a leading zero. So not all airports in the United States take off the leading zero in front of a single digit runway. However, on a military base, they'll put the leading zero. Okay, so there is a leading zero here, but at the other end, where the 5 left is all by itself, there is no leading zero. So anyway, they try to comply with civilian stuff when civilian aircraft are contracted to use the airbase for airlift or whatever they're doing. Okay, so we're going to be making some of these. So we're going to start making, first, we're going to make this instrument ILS Hold short text, which is a black background with yellow writing on top of it. And I've already pre-measured. This is 13 feet by 17 feet. So we got that information. All right. So what we need to do is we need to come in here to Krita and we need to create a new file. So we need to create a new image. And I am going to create 4K images. So I want my width to be 4096. However, I also want it to kind of be the ratio of the real symbol that I'm doing, or the real marking on the ground that I'm doing. And since it's 13 by 17, the ratio width to height is around 76%. So I take 76% of... I take 76% of the 4096 and I get 3112, okay? But I have to verify that the 3112 is divisible by 4, and it is, okay? It comes out to 778, okay? So I am going to make my height 3112, and I'm going to leave my resolution at 150 dots per inch. Okay, let's try this again. 3112, hit enter. All right, and we're going to create. All right, so this is the sign that we're making. So I'm going to create a black background. So I'm going to call this layer black. All right. And I am going to add, I'm going to add another vertex layer. And we'll come back to that, but we're going to go to the black, and I'm going to come over here to my select tool, and I'm just going to make a box around the whole thing. Doesn't matter if I'm outside the white area, because it will only paint inside the white area. All right, and we want this to be a black background, so I'm going to go to the fill bucket and I'm going to drop some black paint right in that area. And now that I'm done, I can go to select and deselect and get rid of my mask. So now we have the black background, and I can turn off the background if I wanted to. You don't have to in this particular case, but if you were doing a transparent background before you export it, turn off the background and you'll have a transparent background. But in this case, this is black paint. All right, so now the next is we need to get a yellow that's going to help us. So I'm going to click on the white background and I'm going to enter in a predetermined what do you call it, hex code that I already have for the yellow that I want, and that is Foxtrot Charlie 747, and hit OK, and we get this yellow that's gonna be just fine. Now I'm going to come over to my vector layer and I'm going to click the text tool, and I am just going to make a box inside of that, and I am going to bold my text, and I'm going to type in INST, and I'm going to save and close, and that puts my text on my screen. Then I'm going to use the transform layer tool, and I'm going to simply take this text and I'm going to stretch it along. I'm going to back it off just a little bit. Okay, and then we're going to kind of move that up like that. Now it looks really fuzzy right now until you hit the arrow button. Now it looks nice. All right, but I want to adjust that a little bit, so I'm going to hit the move tool. Actually, I'm going to use the layer transform tool, and we're just going to move it just a tad, get that centered in there. And then I'm going to hit arrow, and am I going to like that? I believe I am. Okay, the INST stands for Instrument Approach, which is part of the ILS, right? So this is the paint that's going to show up on the ground at the ILS Hold short. All right, so I'm going to save this as a Krita file, and I put those over here, and I'm going to call this ILS Hold, and then I'm going to put MIL at the end for military, and I'm going to hit enter. All right, so now we have our project set up, so I can come in and edit this later if I wanted to. All right, now I want to file export, and I'm going to export this directly into my package sources model lib texture folder, and I'm going to give it the same name, ILS Hold Mil, but I'm going to change that to PNG. Okay, and I'm going to hit save and accept the compression. All right, so right now I'm done with Krita for this particular model. Now we're going to create the plane that we're going to attach or associate that image with. So I have a new project in Blender. Okay, and I am simply, if you noticed over here, I've created a collection called ILS underscore LOD00. Okay, that's my level of detail. All right, and that's the collection name. Okay, I do possibly want to change this just in case I make an ILS for a civilian airport. So I'm going to call this MIL. Okay, so ILS MIL LOD00. All right, that's the name of the collection. Now we're going to add Shift A. I don't have screencast on. Sorry. All right, there we go. I still don't have it on. I didn't hit the check mark. There we go. Now we got it. All right, go back to Tool. Now I'm going to Shift A, and I'm going to add a mesh plane. And there's my mesh plane. And I'm going to change my units since I'm in the United States. Even though I know metric, I'm going to put it in imperial because that's what the measuring is in my tools that I use. It's an imperial. And we are going to go to item, and I'm going to change my X, which is the length, the 17 feet. And I'm going to change the Y to 13 feet. And I'm going to object apply scale. Now, the one thing about projected meshes that it does not like scale. That means you can't have something half scale. It has to be a 1. All right, so that's why we still have to apply the scale, which you do anyway with most of your models. All right, so now I have the ILS plane that I'm going to use. All right, now we need to add some material to that. So I'm going to turn on the texture rendering mode here. I'm going to go to UV editing, and I'm going to hit A to make sure that all my polygons are selected, which is only 1. And we're going to go to UV, Smart UV, and unwrap that. Okay. Now I'll need to rotate this. I know I will. But let's go ahead and come over here to material, and let's add a new material, and let's call this ILS Mill, and come down here to our MSFS material parameters. Let's make that standard, and let's come down here and choose the image that we're going to be using, which is in the texture folder. Notice that I've made a whole bunch of stuff, and a lot of these materials are from the people that have been working on this project. So their materials are coming in. Okay, there's a fuel box there. Where do I have it? What did I call that? It's around here somewhere. May not have a... What did I call that image? Please hold. Sorry about that. I saved it in the wrong spot. Alright, so let's try this again. So I'm going to hit open. Go in the texture folder. I didn't have it in my texture folder. That's why it wasn't there. And we're just going to come down until I find the image that we're using. So there it is right there. So we're going to open that image and it is going to map it on our plane, except we're going to have to make some adjustments. All right, so it needs to be a little larger. Okay, so I'm going to go to vertices and I'm going to select these two vertices and I'm going to move that in the X direction with the GX. And now we have our ground marking. Okay, it's going to look, well, see, it's wrong. All right, so that's okay. So let's go back to here and let's do a control Z. No, let's do this again. Let's do a smart UV unwrap. There we go. Okay, so my X is this way. So I need to rotate this. So I'm going to hit face, select all, rotate 90. And then I'm going to move it. I should have trying to catch up with my brain. That's why. So I'm going to move that up. I could just scale it if I wanted to. GY, move this down. Take these two, slide these over to the X. Slide these over. There we go. Go to layout mode. There we go. Now we got it right there. All right. So we have a simple plane with a texture map to it. So I'm going to file, save, and I need to go into the model lib. So here's the model lib for the Air Force Base, and I'm going to add a new folder, and we're going to call this ILS Mill. Hit enter, and we're going to go into that folder, and we're going to call this Blender file ILS Mill. Okay, and hit save. Now we're going to set it up for export. So I'm going to go to the multi-exporter. I'm going to go to settings. I'm going to go to the textures folder, /texture/. Go to include punctual lights if we need them, which we don't in this case. Apply modifiers. Then I'm going to come over here to object, and I am going to group by collection. Reload just in case. There's ILS Mill. I'm going to generate an XML. My output folder is going to be the model lib /ILS Mill, which is correct. Okay, and I'm going to click the ILS Mill to generate the folders, the files. And then I need to get to my file folder. So I'm going to come up here to the model lib, ILS Mill, okay, which is right there. Okay, I'll show you here in a second. So we're going to hit export. And that automatically writes the XML, the bin, and the GLTF for the LODs. So we have that. Okay. Now I'm going to build the project. So hold on for a second. So let's bring this back up. I'm going to minimize for a second. I'm going to double check I save here, and then we're going to minimize that. Bring up our file folder. There we go. And we're going to come back to our project folder, and I'm simply going to take the XML for the airport, drag it on the FS package tool, and it is building it on the left monitor at the moment. As soon as it's done, I'll drag it over and show you. So it has finished, and 4 done, 0 failed, which is good. Hit any. Here we are in the sim. Okay, and it's really nice that you can use the menus to load your projects up. All right, and I forgot to hit record, so that's why we're behind. So anyway, what I did was I went over to objects, projected meshes, arrow down to my airport, and here's the list of objects I can use for projected meshes, and I selected the ILS mill and then hit the add, and it put it right here. So that's what I've done. All right, so I go to the gizmo, do some rotate, and you notice I don't have any textures on the ground in this area yet, but I will. Okay, I'm still doing some of the ground textures. All right, and then I'm going to translate this, and I'm going to drop this down. And I've noticed that in the sim, see these little black boxes that have the INST in it? Well, they're kind of small in the default sim, okay? But these are the actual size as you measure them as I measure them on the ground, okay? So I'm satisfied that my signs are the correct size, all right? So I've added that projected mesh that has the INST on it, and I like that. So I'm going to duplicate that, and then I'm going to drag the other one right over on top of this one. Okay? And then I'm going to save scenery. All right? So that's using a projected mesh to accomplish the ground markings in this particular case. All right. Now, remember, the other way to do it is that if you open up your material editor and you've added materials to your material library, okay, like I have taxiway markings, which is doing these lines. All right, so if I zoom into the line, we have black background with the yellow lines on top. The default is just the yellow line. There's no black on it. Okay, so I have modified the file that is used to make painted lines, and I've added the black. All right, and I've added that to my material library. And then you simply reassign the symbol. Okay, same with the edge lines over here. Okay, the other way to add a ground marking like this INST is by using your material library, which is just a collection of images that you've loaded in, and then for the objects, instead of a projected mesh, you would use a simple polygon, and it will put that image inside that polygon. All right, the problem with that is, in order to have that work correctly for ground markings like this, the INST in this particular case would have to be made in Krita but mirrored, so it's backwards. Okay, so if you were reading these letters in a mirror, all right, well, that's kind of a pain. Might as well use a projected mesh, and you don't have to do that. Okay, and also notice that I've turned my video of me off. It's not that you guys need to see me anyway, because that usually frees up when I'm in the sim. So we've used a simple projected mesh to view our to create our ground marking. Okay, and so from here I'm just going to, like, there's actually another ILS Hold, so I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to go over to the other ILS Hold. If I remember where it is, it's all the way at the other end. Okay, there's not one here, but it's right down here. Okay, so I'm going to rotate a little bit over here, and I'm going to zoom into this spot. Okay, and I'm going to add it right here. All right, so we're going to go projected mesh. We're going to go click the ILS mill, hit add, adds it, go to the properties, change that priority to 3. In my case, I want to, and I'm going to have this draw before the markings, but after the runways and taxiways, so it fits on top. And then I'm going to drag this over to where I want it, and I am going to simply rotate that like this, and we'll move it a skosh. Move it up. Might have to rotate it a little bit more. And I'm not worried about the image that's underneath because I have not placed any pavement over this area yet. And as soon as I put in a polygon for this material, this other black one will be hidden. Okay, and our INST will be on top. All right, so that right there, make sure you save your scenery, and then eventually you'll have to rebuild. Okay, so that's using a projected mesh to create your ground markings. All right, so I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to choose my airport right here. I'm going to go to the inspector, and since I'm still in production, I'm going to leave this at version 0.5, and I'm going to hit build. This will take a few seconds. Build my project, make sure I have 0 failed, which is good. Get out of that, and I can close the project, and I can go to editor, turn off the editor, and then I can escape out. Okay, so we're going to main, okay, continue. Let this go back to the main. And quit to desktop. And we are out of the sim. So that's using the projected mesh to do your ground markings. And I'm going to continue on doing that for the other ones that I have. And I will see you guys on the next video. Please subscribe if you haven't. Hit that notification bell. And if you feel inclined to help support me on this channel, buymeacoffee.com/myphysicalworld. And I will see you guys on the next one. See you later.